Welcome and thanks for tuning in to a Convo About. This is a series of conversations designed around topics that matter and had with people from our campus. Our hope is that through hearing the individual stories and experiences, we as a campus will be able to pursue uncommon unity at an even greater level. So for the next few moments, sit down, enjoy, dig in, because I believe that God has something great for us as we continue the conversation. Well, y'all, I'm so excited. Thank you guys for being a part of this. This is the first time we've ever done this, which is going to be so fun. And so what I want to do is I know you guys know everybody, but for everybody listening in, I want to go ahead and go around and introduce everybody that we have for the convo today. So we're going to start with my lovely wife, Lauren. This is Lauren. Shannon, who is our worship leader. We got David over here, who is part of our discipleship team, leads small group, leads care, all around all-star. Deborah. Everybody knows Deborah, but Deborah's part of our staff team. Kia, who, if Tamon's mom is my mom, you're pretty much my Auntie Kia then too. Does that work? All right. Kia's part of our Fuse ministry, and I think just like honorary forever gauntlet mom. You go with that? You feel good with that?
I like that better than Auntie.
Okay, all right. We'll go with that. And then we've got Crystal, who's part of our Fuse ministry. And so really, guys, just thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being a part of this. I believe just really special, significant time that we get together, and then we actually get to talk through a topic that I believe is one of the most important. And so what we're going to be talking about, you guys know this, but we're going to be talking about race. We're going to be talking about current racial conditions, racism. We're going to be talking about diversity in the church, and then we're going to talk about like a journey to something better. And so one of the things I want to do is just kind of set the lens for why we're having this conversation. One of the things that we feel is, me and Deborah actually started talking a couple weeks ago about, I feel like there's something that we need to do. I feel like there's a conversation that needs to be had right now. And we thought back to the fact that the Simmons and the Mendenhalls have been having these conversations for years. And we're like, man, what if we could just get a camera in on those conversations so people could experience it? And so we took that one step further and said, well, let's sit down with some people who are leaders in our church, who are so valuable to us, and let's just have some real raw conversation about experience. And so one of the things that we decided was this time was going to be a space where we just get to share real life experience. That this isn't a time for preaching, this isn't a time for debate, this is a time for us to just come in here and just bare our soul to one another, to share with one another, to talk about the real with one another, with the hopes, and I believe that this is going to happen with the hopes that anybody who listens into this really will be able to put themselves in the seat that you're in, that they'll be able to feel what you feel as you share these experiences in your past. And so I really believe that's going to happen. So as people are listening in, that's my challenge. My challenge is really for them to dig deep, to put themselves in your seat, to develop empathy, to think about, well, what if that was me? Because I really believe that that's when we start seeing some cool things happen, and then conversations can continue outside of this space. And so we have so much to talk about, so we're jumping in. If y'all are good with that. Y'all good with that? Yes. All right, we're going to jump in. So, the first question right out of the gate is going to be, a couple weeks ago, headline news was about Ahmaud Arbery. He was shot, he was murdered, and this happened months ago, but we see that this became like national news. It was all over. It became massive because a video was released of his murder. And so my first question is just, what kind of thoughts, what kind of feelings did that invoke in you as that news came out? So David, I'm gonna have you start us out.
Oh, when I first heard it, I got numb at first, because it's one of those circumstances where, like, you've heard it before, and you've heard it again, and you've heard it again, and so initially it's like, okay, wow, again. So I was numb to it, and I was trying my best not to really allow my emotions to take over, and so I just sat down and really allowed my emotions to take over, because I needed to process this. And just through the course of working through that, the toughest part was actually watching that video. And it's a man that went to go look through a house that was not finished being built, going for a jog, and I can just think about, like, I've been in that circumstance. One of my jobs, I've traveled around the United States. I've worked in Brunswick, Georgia, so I've been a black man that job, been a black man that been in Brunswick, Georgia. And on this day, he happened to lose his life. So I went from being numb to actually seeing myself in that circumstance, and I got a little bit angry, and then I got scared. But then I got sad because it was just 26 years old, he was young, doing something that he woke up that morning just saying, I want to go for a jog, and it is just one of those things where it happens so many times that it's when is it going to end? But the challenging part was this, is that it happened in February. And the only reason why it's being brought up now is because somebody recorded it. So the bigger question is, if nobody recorded it, like where would we be today? So I went from being numb to being upset, sad, angry, and now I'm just like when I'm asking myself that question, I'm confused because I don't know what state we would be in right now if it wasn't recorded. So it was a roller coaster of emotions, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Shannon, how about you?
When I first heard about it, I got really bitter. You know that when you eat something and it tastes like molded or it's super sour, you make this face. Like when I first saw it on social media, I was just like, ugh, like this is not where we are. You know what I mean? Like this can't be the reality of where we are at. And then I went through a grief moment where I was like, wait, what if this was my brother? What if this was my cousin? What if this was my nephew? And
sorry, take time.
it brought it all back to reality of, wow, like what could muster up in somebody? What could make somebody take these actions and actually end somebody's life? Like, what can make somebody do that? And like I said, I thought back to my family and I just mourned. Like, I just cried. I mean, I'm already a crybaby, but I just cried and my heart broke. And then being a black woman in society, I automatically got angry at white people. And like, you know how like in your own private space when you see something, you're like, you get angry and then you're like, oh, how could a white man do this? And then like you walk outside of your office, say for example, and you see your white employee who you truly love, you know what I mean? Somebody who you shared your life with. And you can't help but to love and show an admiration for them. That's how I felt. And so it was like I wanted to be angry, I wanted to be mad, but I couldn't, you know? So, yeah. And I still can't. Love overpowers that. So, yeah.
Deborah, how about you?
I had heard about it before it really caught on, like, all over the place. I'd heard about it from Sean King. And so initially I was like, oh, again. I can't watch the video. I cannot. And then I thought, like, how many times? Like what is happening? Like, what is this world? What are we doing? We even call ourselves a Christian nation.
Yeah.
But people are like murdered like this every day. And then I thank God for cameras. But then I couldn't even process the weight of, but how many don't we know?
Yeah.
How many don't we know? And then I just like can't even, because then you just feel like you can't even like go on if you even try to fathom the number. So yeah, it's just absolutely heartbreaking. It really is. And I'm grateful that it caught on the way it did. But then on the flip side, I'm sad that all the rest haven't.
Yeah. And that's kind of the reality I think through is we on purpose decided to have this conversation a few weeks later because you can already see what was trending in social media is gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
And so part of the plan was to have this conversation a few weeks after, though, so it doesn't just disappear. So it's not just something that's trending or popular to post. And I think that's what we feel sometimes is it becomes about what's popular instead of about what's right.
Right, exactly.
Crystal, how about you?
I definitely think just being numb to it is probably the first thing that I also felt, because it's not new, and you know, this is something that is unfortunate, but it's the reality that we're living in, and so I think when that becomes a reality for us, it just becomes kind of like I don't really want to feel anything, because to feel all of that is very painful. It's very hard to mourn the death of someone you don't even know, but to also have to experience the roller coaster of emotions of, dang, this really could have been me, or this really could have been my brother or my father or anything like that. It's very difficult to sit and think how unjust it was and how cruel it was, and to watch the video, it's inhumane, and nobody wants to do that, but you know, I did because I wanted to see it. I wanted to see what happened, because for me, I think that's important. Like, I want to know what happened here. So it definitely brought up anger and bitterness, and it definitely puts a sour taste in my mouth, to think this is the world that I'm living in at 22 years old. I shouldn't have to live in fear for my life, or fear of my brother's life. I shouldn't have to live like that, to worry that if I could walk out the door and someone call my mom and be like, hey, she died, she was murdered, modern day lynching in 2020. It's disgusting, and we should feel that in our stomachs. And I think for me, that's where I feel it at the most, is like, causes me to feel anxiety almost, at what the world is and why it is the way that it is. So yeah, it's hard, you know, it's tough to think through those emotions, to talk about them out loud is tough, because you want to be heard, but there's also at least an unspoken fine line of how much you can feel. So it's all around a very interesting and unfortunate set of emotions to walk through.
Can I ask you something? Because you said something that I think it's understood, but I think it's understood just by in the black community, and it's really powerful. You said mourn somebody that you don't know. Like, for me, and I'm curious to see from your perspective. Like, I'm mourned because I could not only see myself, but just like how you mentioned earlier, I can see people in my family. So like, that's why I mourn, because it, like how we said, it's happened more than once. So I can see this again, and I can see how this can affect me. But for you, in the seat that you're sitting in, you don't mind me asking, like, from your perspective, like, how did you get to that point where it was like, yeah, I'm mourning somebody I don't know? Like, what hit you to make you say that comment? Because I really feel like that was a powerful thing.
I think, you know, once you sit, and I guess for me, just sitting and just reading and listening, it makes me think of the friends that I have that are black. And that's very difficult, you know, to think, you know, one day you have someone and the next minute they're gone because they wanted to do something that they would normally do. And so to mourn his death is something that I think we all have to experience. It's unfortunate because we're not mourning the death of someone that we personally know, but it feels so close to home that it might as well be personal.
Well, it is personal.
Yeah, and it is personal,
you don't
because
know him personally, but it is personal.
Yeah, because I'm black. We're black. We understand some certain things, and it's personal because it really could have been me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It really could have been. It really could have been you.
Yeah.
And that really sucks. So it's definitely always personal. Even if it doesn't happen to us, even if we don't physically see it here in the city that we're in, it's always personal, because it keeps happening.
Yeah.
And it keeps happening to people that look like us. So it feels like there's always a target on our backs. And we're always having to second guess the people around us. And it shouldn't have to be like that. Like Shannon mentioned earlier, like, I don't want to have to feel like I have to watch my back around white people or have to, like, listen closely to what they say so I know how to cut you off when I feel like you're being racist. I don't want to have to feel like that, because that's not how I was created, and that's not how God sees people either. So, yeah, it's definitely personal.
Kia.
So, I try not. I don't even watch the news because of stuff like this. So somebody called me and they said, "Did you see the video with the guy?" I was like, "No." So I went on Facebook, but when I read the caption, I was like, "I'm not watching this." And I understand the people that did watch it, but I actually was mad at everybody who watched it, because I'm like, who would even want to watch this? But for me, it's bad because I have 4 sons, and I have sons that run. I have sons that drive with their hoods on. I have sons that are not bad boys at all. But I have to live with the fear every day that I'm going to get that phone call. He died. So, like, if they're out and about and my phone rings, my heart drops. I don't care if they just left the house. My heart drops. I panic. I stop. And even people on my job, they know, like, if they call, I'm answering, because I'm so fearful that I'm getting that call. And, you know, people say, you shouldn't live in fear. God didn't give you a spirit of fear. No, he didn't. But society has given me fear, and I am fearful every day. And I know it's sickening to them, because I am that overbearing mom, but I don't have a choice because I am so scared. So rather than, you know, us thinking about college plans and, you know, me being excited to meet girlfriends and stuff like that, I'm okay. What do you do when you get stopped by the police? Where do you put your hands? Do you have me on speed dial so you can press FaceTime and drop the phone? Don't drive with your hood on. And now they can't run. Like, it sucks. I hate it, and I mostly hate it because there's nothing I can do about it. I can't protect them forever, and clearly we're not living in a society that's going to protect them either. And I hate it. Like you said, I don't want to get that phone call. Like, if anybody knows me, I keep one of them with me at all times if I'm not working, and it's not to be overbearing, but it's just I need to be able to at least put my hands on you, because I don't trust.
I think something just that needs to be said again, because I've heard you guys say it, and I think this is why the conversation is so important, is it's not the first time.
Right.
This is time after time after time after time. And some have been documented, some haven't. And so, I mean, I think, you know, we're raising kids, and we're going to have to teach our girls to drive one day. And I think the last thing we're teaching them is about putting a hood on. We're not even thinking about that. I mean, we're thinking about how to teach them how to accelerate and brake and, you know, how a car works. We're not thinking at all about the fact that if they get stopped by a cop, this is what you do. If they, you know, and I think that's just a reality that black people live with that white people don't.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the importance of a conversation about this, is just to bring awareness to that. Because, I mean, when we talk about parenting, we talk about the things we want to teach our kids, those type of things don't even come through our mind, and they are like the necessities, you know, in your family.
Definitely.
So I don't, you know, I'm going to assume nobody out there thinks that racism isn't real and prevalent. But just for the sake of having some experiences shared, I'd love just to hear some experiences that maybe y'all have had where you've been, like, personally victimized. If you'd be willing to share that. Like, David, I'd love to hear if you have any experiences in your past.
Yeah, I lived in Arkansas for a brief moment in my life before moving to Dallas, and living in the part of I lived in Hot Springs, Arkansas, but living in that part, it was like a culture shock, because a lot of people didn't look like me. A lot of people, and the people who did, it's like I was different because I'm coming from South Carolina, graduating from college, and it was just it's just a different way of living. in the place that I was living. And so what happened was, met this girl. We just were being friends, and I mean, you know, developing like a friendship that could eventually possibly turn into a relationship one day. And I met her family, as far as knowing, because she was living with us, like one of her cousins or whatnot at the moment, older cousin, and you know, everybody liked me. Everybody was like, "Oh, he's nice." And so she called me crying one day and was like, "Well, I got to tell you this," and I mean, she's like, "Yeah, I like you, but I can't date you because you're black." And I was like, "Huh?" She was like, "Yeah, my cousin saw that, you know, we're getting close, and he said that there's nothing wrong with you, but the only reason I can't date you is because you're black, and I can't bring a black man to my house."
She was not.
And she was not black. Yeah, she was not black. And yeah, that's one of those, like, guys talk about, we take losses whenever it's like a form of rejection, but that was a loss that kind of it stuck with me for a while, because it wasn't based on my character. It wasn't based on the man I was. It was just based on my skin, and I mean, I can't do anything about that. I mean, I can go to a dermatologist and get my skin cleared. I can whatever. I don't know. I can go in the summer and get darker, but like, I can't change my race. This is me, and I'm happy to say who I'm proud to be who I am, and like, that just stuck with me because like, I wasn't good enough for somebody just because like you're black. Like, that doesn't sit well, and that sticks with you for years. So like, trying to like be friends and trying to like move on from that, it sticks in the back of your head that you're not good. And the funny thing about that lie that's in your head is that it can change to tell you that you're not adequate, you're not good, you're not important, you're not special in other areas. And so you walk around thinking, I'm black, I'm not good enough. Where do I go from there?
You know, I grew up on the West Coast, and I grew up around a huge array of races, creeds, religions, and traditions. And I grew up with Asian people, white people, black people, Indian people, and I ate all their food, you know. Then I moved over here in high school, and I had one of those awakenings of, oh, you're just a black girl. I went to a private Christian school, and it was one of those, oh, you're just a black girl. And I was like, okay, wait. Like, why does my race matter? Like, I'm just trying to get an education here. And so, and it's not to bash my school, but it's the Southern mentality that came with it. That what was, like, brought up in these kids' lives and now within a classroom. I've had those experiences where it's like, oh, you about to date a black man? Well, what if he was white? What if he was Asian? What if he was a totally different race? And so I've personally witnessed white people, say for example in Target, I've witnessed white people look at black and white couples and give this look of unapproval. And I'm just kind of like, this is California. This was normal. But in the South, why do we have to worry about this?
So it feels like it's 2020.
Exactly.
Like, seriously.
Exactly. And so it was a conversation of, okay, well, in commercials it's a new trend. Now we have to have an interracial couple in Target commercials, for example.
I just noticed that
Yeah.
recently. There was a white dad and a biracial daughter, and I literally was like, oh my gosh, this is revolutionary right here. Because you don't see that either. You don't see many white men, like on like TV or movies or anything like that, white men with black women. So I thought even that insinuated the mom is black. So, I mean, I thought that was huge, and even in a commercial.
Yeah.
And, you know, David, to hear you say the stuff that is still bothering you, you know, even in your adult life, my 17-year-old son just went through that same situation. It had me so upset because when he introduced me to this girl, he knows the first thing that I ask is, do they believe in God? Because, they don't. I mean,
Good mom.
So, and he was
That's a
so
good
excited.
mom.
He was like, yes, they believe in, Christ. They go to church. They this. I'm like, okay. 3 weeks later, that's the exact same thing he came to me and said. He said, and y'all know he's my baby, so this breaks my heart. He said, Mom, I took an L. And I'm like, about what? And when he told me that this young lady's father basically said he cannot date her because he's black and he looks like a thug. Explain to me exactly what does that mean?
Right. What does it
Because anybody who knows him knows he is the furthest thing from a thug. So, and he acted like it was okay, but as the days went on, I could see that it was really eating at him. And again, as a mom, I just want to grab him, hug him, and just be like, whatever. And only thing I can say, if they feel that way now, be glad that you got away from them, because that's not people that you want to deal with. But like you said, he has no control over his race. And I even inboxed the guy. I was like, who is he? I inboxed him and I told him, I said, would you just have a conversation with him? Meet him. Ask anybody about him. And I promise you will feel bad about what you said, because he is he's not what people have said he is. So, I mean, he refused to do it, but his comment was, I don't feel like we should have to get involved. You got involved when you told your child that she can't date my child because of the color of his skin. Yeah. So, yeah. I get it.
Shannon, can you share a little bit about your experience with the restaurant and feeling like you had to prove something to people who were speaking to you? And you had to say hello to the guys outside of the restaurant when you were picking up food.
Oh, yes. So I was like, what are you talking about? No, yes. So I am kind of Jamaican. I have 3 jobs. I work in landscaping, I sing, and I do Uber Eats on the side.
Wait a second, time out. I was about to say, for real? I didn't
No,
know that.
Wait, we gotta get the punchline.
I get what you're saying, but
It's
so
Jamaican
dumb.
money. Jamaican money.
Okay.
You got 3 jobs.
I'm like, how did I do that? I'm sorry. I'm so
Gotta get the
gullible.
punchline,
Please.
But so I was Uber Eats, and of course during this COVID thing, this was one option I had for making money.
Right.
And so I get a delivery downtown, and so I'm like, okay, I park in front of the restaurant, and I get out, and in front of the restaurant, there was a white father and a white mother and 2 kids, and then an older white lady. And then, of course, there was the restaurant doors with the table right in front, so pretty much we couldn't go in. And so I had to walk pretty much through these people to get to the front door. So I get out of my car, they look at my car and they're like, who's that? Who's that? So then I get out, and you can kind of tell that they're looking at me like, sizing me up. Just like, who's this black girl? And so I walk, and the father's like, hey, how are you? Just in a very masculine way. And I was like, I'm well, how are you? And so you can kind of tell the look on his face changed. And he was just like taken aback, just like, oh, you know how to speak. You know how to carry yourself. You actually know how to have a conversation. And so then we started talking about something that was on my shirt, and I referenced, I sang at a national anthem. And they're like, oh, you could sing for us. And I'm like, I'm not going to sing. I'm trying to pick up food.
We're not doing that.
Oh.
I got a timer. I got to go. These people won't eat their food. So I kind of cut the conversation short, and so I left. But then I started thinking, like, do I have like this, like a vendetta or like a word written on my head as, oh, this is ghetto black girl getting out of this car. Like, she probably wouldn't know how to address me. She wouldn't know how to speak. She wouldn't know how to carry herself.
Like he was almost testing you?
Right, yes. She's not educated, you know? Like, I just graduated with a bachelor's degree, you know? Like, I shouldn't have to open my mouth and articulate my words to make you feel any type of way. But I felt that in me. My mom raised me to have conversations that are wise, conversations that show who you truly are, show that you are an educated Black woman. And so, yeah, power to my mom. She's awesome. But, yeah, that was an experience I had. Yeah.
I just thought that was important to bring up because never would I walk into a restaurant and somebody ask me, "Hi, how are you?" It would be so weird.
Just the test. And if
Just-
anything, I think the further part of that is, you know, worst case we think, well, those people are weird.
Right.
We're not back in the car questioning,
Why
like,
did they
why did they do
ask
that?
me
What did they
that?
think of me? You know,
Right.
I think that's just because it's, again, a history of these things happening over and over again.
Yeah.
That's
And I
so
think-
distinct.
I think some people do that even without even knowing
Absolutely.
or thinking that, oh, maybe I'll be inclusive, but it's like,
Exactly.
are you?
Right? Are you really?
Chris, how about you?
So I think for me, just like, I guess the earliest that I can like remember recognizing, oh, that I'm different, and that's not necessarily always going to be a good thing to some people. I think I was like 6. I don't know. I was young, and my mom was she was going to go vote. I don't know what she was voting for because I was 6. So, but she was going to go vote, and she had told me to like sit at this table. It was at an elementary school, and I was just sitting at the lunch table, just waiting on her to come back from the voting booth. And while I was sitting there, this white lady approached me, and she handed me her garbage. She didn't say anything to me. She just gave me her garbage, and then she said, "Go throw this away for me." And then she walked away. And I remember holding her stuff, and I was like so confused about what had just happened here. But I didn't think it was that big of a deal, again, because I'm a child. So I didn't think it was anything wrong with this situation. I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll just go throw away her trash. And then my mom comes up to me, and she says, "Who gave this to you?" And I told her, I was like, "This woman." And she was walking out the door, so she sees her. And she says, "No, you put this down because you don't throw away anybody's trash because you're not anybody's help." And I remember, like, us walking to the car, and she seemed angry, and I thought I had done something wrong. And then she explained to me, you know, later on, like, what was happening in this situation, and why it was not okay for that woman to approach me as if I'm supposed to cater to her needs, as if I'm supposed to be her help in throwing away her trash. So I think, you know, I really love what you said, David. Like, you walk around and you feel like you're not good enough for all of your life. And you have to do this questioning of, am I, like, tripping or...
It plants a seed.
Right, and it's like from a very young age, you start
Yeah.
to wonder, like, okay, well, maybe I should be less of myself. And I think for me, if, you know, just being really honest, like, I don't really think I was comfortable being Black until I was, like, 21. And I'm 22. So I don't think it ever felt like I was good enough in the skin that I'm in. I never felt adequate. I never felt like I would reach where I wanted to go in life because of just little things, and that was the start of it. You know, that wasn't the last one, but it was definitely the start, and so it definitely follows you for a long time. But, you know, I can sit here now and tell you, like, you know, power to the people. Like, I'm proud to be Black, and I understand the system in which was really set against me. And now I can understand how to encourage myself and other people that look like me.
That's good.
That's good.
I feel like no matter, I don't know, man, I just get, I think it always gets me. I think that just the stark contrast of the things that the typical white person goes through and the average Black person goes through. is so different. And so, I mean, I hear these stories you guys are sharing, and, you know, of course we've talked before, and it's very real then, and I think even now it's just so, it's awful. And so I think one of the things that causes, though, is it makes it difficult to have conversations.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I think what it causes is white people that probably want to do something about it, or they want to say the right things, or they want to teach their kids the right things.
Yeah.
But sometimes it goes awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And so what are some things, I mean, honestly, Debs, get us started. What are some things that, this might be just a helpful hint for everybody.
Yeah.
Life
hack right here.
A little life hack
Life hack.
about some things that white people might say that they think are very PC, non-offensive, but in actuality offensive.
Yeah. I don't see color, or I'm colorblind. That's like one of the worst things, because it is like that seed planted again, like not validating that we are different, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong, and like, let's celebrate that. But saying like, I don't see color, or I don't talk about color, or any of that, that's super offensive. Even if your heart behind it is not meaning to be, that's so offensive, because it's almost like you're taking a piece of us away when you say that.
And undermining God's creation.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
Lauren, this is something that I got from you, is like, God's the best designer out there.
Yeah.
Like, he is so creative in what he did. And so for us to say we don't see it,
Well,
Right.
to gloss over it, it's offensive, yes, obviously, but also, I mean, it's insulting to God.
Yeah.
And to say, I mean, I think that if the tables were turned, I mean, it's ridiculous. They're just ridiculous.
Yeah.
what else? What else are some things like that maybe you guys have heard or you have experienced somebody say what they're trying, but it's just a miss?
I got two. One is like, if you don't know me and you just walk up to me like just give me a random black joke, I take a step back.
Oh my
and
gosh.
it's, I mean, and it's you can tell like the heart behind it, but it's just like
Yeah.
You don't have to do
Yeah.
like literally like you're just
Yeah.
looking around, and so you're just like looking for somebody to be like,
Yeah.
help me.
Or
And-
automatically
yeah.
speak slang to you.
And because you know sometimes
You
like
don't have to
that
speak
that common ground is just laughter, and I think sometimes it's like I probably would have started with the like why was 6 afraid of 7 joke instead of that one. 7, 8, 9 just in case, you know, yeah, no, something like that, you know,
7, 8, 9,
yeah,
I get it.
It was somewhere like that, yeah. But yeah, so that, and then also if I think it's meant as a compliment, because a lot of times you see people's hearts. But I guess just being in our skin and just seeing like that whole, like you said, plants the seed. When that, like if you speak in public, and instead of just saying, "Hey, great job," oh, you articulate.
Yes, you speak. Yeah.
You
Yeah,
speak well.
You speak well.
Like they're
I'm not
shocked.
sure what that means
Right.
because it's
Come on now.
I'm a grown male. I just happen to be an African American male, and I understand like the art of public speaking is difficult. But hey, you did a great job. Instead of you speak well, it's weird. And it gets even more weird whenever like you're not public speaking, but you're talking to somebody and they say, "Oh yeah, you speak well," but it's like okay, like
What
in
did you
casual
expect?
conversation.
Right.
So
that's
yeah.
there too. Yeah.
So, yeah.
You listen to this, sometimes there's like this stuff, you know, people I think will listen to it, this stuff doesn't happen. But it happens all the time.
yeah.
All
Still.
the time.
We all have stories. You
Yeah.
know? It's just opening that book
Yeah.
and asking, like, what have you truly been through? You know? So,
Well, that's why I think about that. I think about something that I hear all the time is when a conversation like that starts and maybe a little pushback comes, the white person's response is automatically, whoa, I have black friends.
Oh, that's the
Yeah.
worst.
Yeah.
Let's just white people speak to white people, and I'll just say, just don't say that.
Right.
It's a terrible response.
Because I think it's exactly what Shannon's saying is like, if you really have black friends and you have a true relationship with
You
those
would
friends,
say
then you know,
not say
then you know
that.
you would never
You
say
would
that.
never say that.
And I think
Yeah.
that's what it cuts down to. Is like, oh, you probably have some black people like maybe in a circle.
Right.
Right.
Maybe you
But-
kind of know them, but if you knew them on the level you claim to, you would never say,
Yeah.
I have black friends.
Because
Then
you
you're
would
just
know.
tokenizing.
Yeah.
Right.
And you would
Exactly.
know not to say,
Say that.
Like,
Exactly.
Can I? I was going to add something like it's a distinction too. If you say like, let's say you're in a conversation and somebody says something and I'm like, hey, that offends me, if I say something that offends me, I'm not saying that you're racist. I'm just saying,
Yes.
based on what you're saying in that particular matter,
Mm-hmm.
that was offensive towards me. So I really feel like understanding the difference whenever like that is said, it can really help maybe push forward some conversations.
Great.
Because it's like if it's taken as I'm calling, let's say I have one of my white friends, like if I say I'm offended and if he thinks I'm calling him a racist, then it's already it to him it's like I'm being defensive, but then now he has a defensive fact because he thinks that I'm calling him racist. No, I'm just saying I'm not calling you racist, just like that was just offensive towards
Yeah.
me. So I really like to, I wanted to pinpoint that distinction
that's
whenever
good.
that's said.
That's
It's
good.
helpful.
And also, I think that it's just from me to you. That's extremely gracious of you to even
Yeah.
enter in that conversation, because it's honestly you don't owe anybody an explanation really as to why you are offended. It's very gracious to start that dialogue and start that conversation.
Yeah.
So
I feel like sometimes what happens in conversations, and I don't know if it's the South but someone will be telling a story, but when they describe black people, they say like this black guy. But no, but if other people are like they don't say white lady, they say the lady was talking to this black guy, and it's
Come
like,
on.
well,
the lady was
why
just
do
talking
you
to the
have
guy.
to right? Like,
Yeah.
what does that matter? I don't know why
Right.
that distinction is made, but I hear that a lot. That like it's put in front of like
Yes.
when describing a black person, there are races included in
Yeah.
front of the story.
That is true.
Well, one of the things I want to do is change gears a little bit and talk about specifically the Charleston campus. I want to talk about diversity in a church. This is something that our church is for. We are about pursuing uncommon unity, and so I just want to ask you very candidly, what's it like? What's it like being a black male or female, a leader in our church, in a church that's predominantly white? And so I don't know, Shannon. I mean, you lead from the stage,
Yeah.
and so I'd love to hear from you.
Yes. So I have the ultimate privilege of leading our congregation on the stage, and I say that with like the most genuine love. You know what I mean? Because when I look out into the audience, can you imagine? Yeah. When I look out into the audience, I see stories. You know?
Yeah. Wow.
I see, thank you. I see single moms. I see an older white couple. I see a black couple. I see black children. I see white and black friends. I see everybody. And when it comes to personally, like my mentality towards it, it's a little difficult being the only black girl on stage. I have this thought process of when I think of it, I'm like, yes, a black girl on stage. Yes, I've gotten so many applause from other black women and men and families that come up to me after service and they're like, yes, thank you, black girl. We appreciate you. There's that whoo-hoo, but then there's also that, but why just me? You know, like,
Yeah.
the stage is so huge, and I'm not pointing fingers at any of my leadership or anybody who has once wanted to be on the stage. But I am saying and proclaiming that this is a genuine place where I come and I literally let my heart out on stage.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of flack that comes with it. There's a lot of like thoughts that come with even creating a service or getting on the mic and literally taking myself back to my holiness days or my Pentecostal days and being like, do I want to say this right now? Like, I don't know if everybody's ready for that. Like, I feel the love. You know what I mean? Just
I think
whatever.
We're ready.
Hey,
ready.
you
We're
say
ready.
it, but
We're
I don't
ready.
know. Sometimes I'm just like,
I got you, Shannon.
But yeah, there's a lot of weight in that, and just my history, knowing that this is what is in me, and I want to let out. And I feel like the best move, the best shove, in the best direction is just understanding. Just truly like being like, for right now, yes, this black girl's on stage, yes, she's representing me and my family. And we're going to get to that. We're going to get to the other side of that, of let's have more people on stage. You know what I mean? Like, let's train up our people. Let's cultivate this atmosphere that is multicultural, that is diverse, that is full of love, full of God, you know? So that's my spill on it.
Permission granted. Just tell me.
Yeah, it's a work in progress, you know, like on all of our campuses. Every single stage. We have pockets. We have black people. But it's going to take time. It's going to take time. Yeah.
Deborah, tell me about, you're on staff. I think we've had these conversations so many times, but share just what some of the weight you feel, some of the responsibility you feel, some of the differences it seems like, some of the disconnects.
I think there's a reality of being the only black female on staff. I think that alone, to know you don't walk in a room and you walk in the room and no one looks like you or nobody can necessarily relate. I think it's definitely heavy, but I know that for whatever reason, this is where I'm supposed to be, so I trust. But it is hard. I think what has gotten harder over the years is it feels like the burden of diversity has been put on the minority. And I think that that's what feels hard for me. Yes, I will do whatever we need to do because I truly love this church. But we can't bear the burden of making this place inclusive for other minorities to be a part. Like that is too much, and I think that is the weight that I wrestle with, and I just have to surrender to God. But
because I see it on a Sunday. I see it when we do family time, or we have a time where you got to meet and greet.
Oh yes, that's the worst. And we haven't meant. I don't think it hasn't been on purpose. But I think if someone could be like a fly on the wall when we say go meet someone who doesn't look like you, or go ask someone about their life and they don't look like you. Well, it's like 15 of us. So then it's literally like a line. And then and that's weird. And now we're like, I don't even know if I want to do that, because not everybody's opting into that. And that's okay. I want to be so clear to say that too. Like, not everybody feels the burden to educate and wants to share, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think those of us that do feel like, whoa, we can only do but so much, and we can only go to so many coffees and have so many conversations, and have you come circle around us, because it's only so few of us. Like we have to take this a step further and do a little bit better than that, because then the burden will be too much, and I think it makes us want to just kind of say like it's too much, it's too hard sometimes.
And I'm guilty of that, because when I went to Gauntlet, I roomed with Deborah, and I'm like, oh, this is the time for me to have this conversation, because she is the person to have this conversation with. And I did. I'm like, okay, so what you doing about getting more representation for us in this church, And I was shocked that it had been a conversation before. I was like, oh, so they do notice? So I was happy about it, but then I was like, okay, so if they notice, like, why hasn't there been a change? So I'm guilty of that, because Streamline, thank you for rooming me with her, because I got some questions to ask her,
But it was good, because it was needed. Because I would rather be asked than not asked. I think it's the superficial go meet, shake hands with somebody in the service kind of thing that I'm just like, we can shelf that. But I think the actual genuine, hey, I love this church, I want to be a part of it, but I have some questions about the demographic, and I think there's nothing wrong with asking that. And our leadership has been open to those conversations. I think the hard part is we have such a long way to go. And when this is something so raw and real and deep for us, having patience to get there, and watching the journey, it feels like it's almost like not even moving at all, but it's such a big culture shift to make, and that's the tension to live in, is like, how patient can you be? But then you love the church, but then it's like, is anything happening? I don't know. It's tough. It's tough.
I believe in the power of one. not like a statement. I mean, like nothing like a thought behind it. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, all it really takes is just for one person to see one person to do one thing that causes a movement. Think about a lot of times whenever somebody grew up and they'd be like, oh yeah, I was young and I saw this. Like, this is a random example. Like, I'm part of a Mega Psi Phi fraternity. So when I was like 6 years old, I saw a guy with a purple shirt barking, throwing up the Mega Psi Phi sign. I was like, oh, so cool. And then whenever I went to college, I actually saw them doing it, and it brought me back to that moment to remember it. So why am I bringing this up right now? We are right. We don't see a lot of African Americans on stage. But whenever we do, it's one of those things where when you plant a seed, you can't microwave that seed. So even though like that seed may not populate right now, who's to say the next 3 to 4 to 5 years, we're going to have more people saying, I want to volunteer. I want to step up. I want to do this. I want to take this step. Right before we even started like discussing this tonight, I actually had the opportunity to sit down. I say his name, Nemo. He was right there. I'm asking him what he wants to do with his life. I hear he wants to go to seminary. I'm in seminary. Part of our conversation the other night, I was like, hey, you know, this is something that I said I wanted to do. I didn't have the opportunity to reach out to somebody that looks like me that's doing it. So I saw him and I was like, well, I'm going to talk to him about it. So that's going to be a conversation that him and I can start sharing and stuff like that. But the reason why I bring this up is that if you're that one, and if you feel like, you know, God has put you in this position to do that, stand firm on that one, because you don't, we don't see what the ultimate end game is going to be with us being that one. So,
well, I'll even just speak to that and say we started coming to New Spring in 2012, and it was like literally five Black people I think came at the time. Like, it really was not super diverse at all. And now to see how diverse Fuse is, and to see how much more diverse, we have a way to go. But to be there in 2012 when, like, we knew, like, you could count on one hand, and then to see, you know, that's the slow cultivation. And it is slow, but it is happening.
The reason why I came here was because of a Black person. And I trusted, you know, their intellect of this church. So I was like, let me just continue to keep coming. So
you know what I love? I love the fact that you had questions and you had a spot to ask them. But I'm wondering how many people are going to be able to listen to this that have those same questions, and they're going to be able to get their questions answered and take a next step in. I mean, that's what I think sounds so encouraging to me. Is it's like, you can't always have the perfect opportunity to room with somebody at Gauntlet, right? But man, maybe you could listen to something on YouTube where you hear about your people that you see at church. So that's so encouraging.
What about your story, Brendan?
Well, I think I'm going to defer to Lauren.
Let me just say, before y'all answer, I kind of want to set this up because I am really excited for you to answer this, because I think the perspective of white people going from maybe unaware to aware, and then living your life and having your actions reflect the level of awareness that you have, I think that is a monumental journey. And so I would love for you to like walk us through like that kind of your journey with that.
Well, that's like, I can't even live up to that, but thank you.
Yes, you do.
So Brendan and I are not from the South either. We grew up in Maryland, and until I was 13, we lived in Bowie, Maryland, which is a suburb of DC. Actually, I should back up just a little bit. I want to just preface this by saying that my parents and my family are a great testament also to change. And so before I go into any of this, they are in this regard very different people than they were when we were younger. But so we lived in Bowie for 13 years. When we moved, it was expressed to us as children that the reason that we were moving was because our neighborhood was getting too Black. And that was always the language around places, always. This area is Black, this area is white. and I mean, and this is in like the 90s, like mid 90s. It was very segregated. And that just, you know, I grew up in a Christian church-going household. Our church was in that same city. So, but a very white church. I mean, a white church for sure. And that just never felt right to me. But I think as a kid, it's like you don't really know how to articulate those feelings or, you know, say things to your parents. I'm sure that I did, because that is just my disposition.
That is you.
But then I don't know. And we moved to a white place. Just grew up pretty white. There were 2 black kids in my school, in elementary school. Maybe that many in our high school. Brendan and I went to high school together. Would you say? Very, very white still.
Locked it down.
We're getting off track. So, then I went to college at Winthrop University, which is very diverse. Also, so interesting because diverse and Southern, which is like 2 different things, you know, very different things. And there were conversations about that with my parents. I don't know though. I mean, it was a cool experience. Like it really just kind of gave me some courage and boldness to have conversations and to be like, oh wow, what I thought all along was true. Like why are we using this language?
Yeah.
What, you know, why are we saying this to children? And perspective changed and thoughts were very much confirmed in me, you know, coming into my adulthood. And then I think this is probably where you can chime in. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I think the whole thing's been a journey. I think, you know, Lauren has always been somebody I think with just like the right compass, to know that those things are just like, that's not right. But I think even that's a great first step and starting place. But I think something that's been such a blessing to us is that, I mean, we've had some opportunities to dive deep into some of these relationships. Mm-hmm. I mean, most everybody knows Taman has become such a big part of our family. But I think even bigger than Taman is his family has become such a big part of our family. Mm-hmm. I'm reminded of some specific times that I don't want to pass over because I think it's so applicable for people to just use as handles. But I remember when we met Taman through Fuse, and we would have him over for dinner. And I remember I'd go pick him up, and then I'd drop him off at his house. And I always remember dropping him off at his house, and he'd walk in, or he'd have to go grab something or whatever. And I'd sit there, and I'd think, all right, we know Taman, that's comfortable, we know him, but like, his family's right inside that house. Do I just sit in this car, or do I go in and meet him?
Yeah.
And so I remember feeling, I think, Holy Spirit moment, get out of your car, put it in park, and go in the house and meet his family. And so I got to meet his mom, and I just remember thinking like that. I think that's what that's just what's so beautiful right now is like, that's our family. Mm-hmm. Like
but I also, and I just want to hit pause real quick. From our perspective, I have never felt, I mean, I have always felt extremely welcome by them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's just, and I'll just put it out there, I think it's often the case in my own personal experience that it is not the white person who is not welcome in a community of black people. And you can't say the same if the tables are turned.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I remember the moment. I remember the moment in the car, and I think about if I would have stayed in the car, that would have been the equivalent of me saying I have black friends.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's where it landed. It would have said I have this circle there's some black people in it.
Yep.
I see them, I talk to them, but I don't have a deep relationship with them.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was so symbolic at that time of just like getting up, getting in the house. I mean, Kia, you're in my life because of that.
That's right. I'm not going nowhere.
Please. But I just think God had such richness for us on the other side of family because we were willing to step into some uncomfort. Because it was something that maybe just wasn't what we grew up in. It wasn't that thing.
Well, and just, an encouragement to those white people who might say, oh, well, I have black friends. Like, and maybe most of the time you don't mean that to be disrespectful or, you don't mean it the way that it
Correct.
is. But it is an indicator that you symbolically, I don't know, whatever.
Use those big
Brendan
words.
gets mad
girl.
at
I
me.
don't know.
That you're
Yeah.
not figuratively sitting in your car.
Yeah.
And if you really want to see change in the world and for our children and in our churches, you got to get out of your car.
Yeah.
So good.
And so, we don't share this to be like, oh, we're whatever. Like, no.
Yeah.
But to encourage people who just might be well-meaning, but like, I don't know. This seems like a big thing to take on, and how do we even get there? Like, just get out of your
car.
Symbolic.
I want to sing the song right now.
Figurative
Get
car.
out of my
Oh, God.
No, not doing that.
Car. We're really getting off track.
Shannon, can I get on stage? Can I
No.
sing? Can I do it? No. Nothing.
There's a
Okay.
get to
place for
speak.
everyone.
Yes.
Thank you. I
Come
appreciate
on.
that.
Yes.
I'll take that.
Shoot your
Yeah.
You each have your own spiritual giftings.
One more thing, I left this out, is that another, for me personally, just to like give all of the honor to you and Jerry, Deborah, is before Taman came in our lives, before any of this, y'all came over for Friendsgiving, and you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Jerry and I sat for, it felt like
17
hours.
I do think it was
Forever.
2 hours. I do think
It was
it was.
the sun
we were
set and it
cleaning up.
rose again.
It is
You guys
true.
were still
it was,
talking.
and we had me, Jerry, my friend Gina, had the most honest and real conversation about race and other things. And I will never forget that conversation. It was the time where, okay, like, I know that some of these things that have been sort of ingrained in me as a child are wrong, to, okay, like, now I'm kind of like waffling around and figuring out what do we do with this. And then, boom, Friendsgiving with Jerry, it was like, okay, I know. Because when he left, he said to me, and I don't even remember specifically, but it was something to the effect of, if somebody who looks like you doesn't do something about what we just talked about, I'm going to be really disappointed.
I believe he was just that
And,
harsh.
like, so
Yeah.
here we are. So,
Yeah.
but I mean,
It's
true.
so true, because that's when the parts become whole.
Right. Yes.
That's when it comes together, because we can share our experience. But when you say, I validate your experience and I stand with you in your experience, that's the parts coming together to be whole. And that's the ultimate, that's like all any of us want.
Yes.
Like when you're teaching your daughters about Michelle Obama, like you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to do that. And now your girls already so little will be like allies in this, and like, gosh, it makes me hopeful for my girl, because you're raising girls like that.
Give me the tissues.
Like, it's beautiful. It's what it's what everybody, the part everybody can play in this.
Yes.
I love that. Well, here's what I want to do. I want to ask one final question as we start to wrap this up, and with your best, concisest answer, I want to read this. But really, I think it is clear how much you guys love this church. You wouldn't be sitting up here with me trying to move this thing forward if you weren't in. And so first, thank you. Thank you for that. That is not missed on me. That is a big deal. You know, Lauren, I think, said this earlier, but like it is very gracious of you guys to be able to come up and just share your life. But because of that, what is like your final thoughts? What's the last thing that, to wrap up the conversation, what are your final thoughts that you could offer about all of this? Summarize it in a sentence or two that you'd want to give out.
You know, when I thought about my final thoughts, I went back to the Emmanuel 9. And I remember when that happened, everybody was so worried that the city was going to get angry. But instead of getting angry, the city came together like never before. Like, it didn't matter your denomination, it didn't matter your race, it didn't matter your socioeconomic status. Nobody cared about any of that. People just came together and began to pray. And I don't think that the church often realizes the power that they have to move forward with change. And if I could just offer, you know, one piece of advice, I would just tell, you know, New Spring, you know, everybody here to just grab a hold of that power and let's just do it. You know, I know it's easier said than done, but baby steps.
Gotta be a praying church. I love that.
I just want to encourage everybody to volunteer, but all right, so just volunteer first. But honestly,
New Spring Dusty,
you might like this one. You ever just had like something pop in your head and you're just like, oh yeah, I cannot wait to say
All
this
the time.
and I forgot it.
That's why we would never quit hanging out.
Nah, I'm gonna try it though. Continue the conversation to create change in our community and our church. That would be my hope for everybody, because we have to continue the conversation, and the more we talk, the more it's going to create the change that we're asking for. We're trying to see, and that's going to create the change not only in our church, because what we do here, we take it out there.
That's right.
What we take out there, we bring more people back into the body. And so continue the conversation to create change in our church and our community.
I love it.
Coffee cup. I forgot it.
I love it.
Already.
Around having that conversation with others, I actually had one last night with somebody who serves and volunteers, and he said, it was an older white man, and he said, I have to admit that I will never know enough. You can't put yourself in my shoes. And like, I feel like we have to honor that, you know? Like, a white person will never know what it feels like to be in brown and black skin. And it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. And from that point, we have to educate ourselves. Outside of church, outside of our norm, we have to ask questions. Because if you don't say anything, you won't find answers. So, yeah, educate.
I love it.
Can I say one thing real quick?
Always.
I really like how you said that. And if I can piggyback off what you said, how you said the white gentleman he said he'll never know what it's like to be in your shoes. I'm gonna switch the perspective. Is that I think whenever it does come to those conversations, when we humbly come to those conversations, not only just when some like how you said he's gonna never know what it's like to be in your shoes. What would that conversation look like if we flipped it to say, I don't know what it's like to be in their shoes also, in your shoes also. So as long as we have that humbleness and that grace, that's going to continue that conversation, just like how you said. So always having it in perspective.
Very true.
I think for me, something that came into my head was, we're supposed to be the city on the hill, salt and light of this earth. As Christians, as believers, we can't be villages in the valleys anymore. So that means we do all of these things. And that means we do pave the way. And I believe 100% that that's what we're called to do as believers. I think this is, what Jesus went to the cross willingly for our sakes, so that we could genuinely see change, the change that he prayed for us, and is still praying for us. So I think that for me, it's just like, we just got to be the city on the hill like he wants us to be the salt and the light of this earth, and be willing to be uncomfortable, because we all know this, Christians are never called to be comfortable, because Christ put himself in all types of uncomfortable situations, and he is the perfect example of talking about race and all types of things that we want to, you know, make our point across and be known for as a church. Like, we have to be known for these types of things. So I think the encouragement is to know that that power is in us because the Holy Spirit is in us. And so we've been given, you know, not a spirit of fear, 100%. We have full power and full access to what God wants, and this is what he wants. I think if we understand that God cares about racism just as much as he does any other sin, you name it, that churches are so fervent with speaking about and, you know, preaching about on the streets. Like, if we can understand and say, well, if we talk about homosexuality this way, we can talk about racism this way too. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both and.
That's good. That's good.
Deborah.
I would just say, for those of us willing to share our experiences, for us to just step into that and share humbly. And then for those on the other end of those conversations to not just listen, but actively listen. Because I believe if we can do those things together, then that raises awareness and educates. Then you get empathy, and then we have those parts coming together. And this doesn't have to continue like this, on and on and on.
Good.
Well, y'all said amazing things. Really, just to wrap it up, what I would say, what I would, you know, call the church to, is one, to agree with everything that each of you said. It was spoken beautifully, right on point. But I would also say, one, we need to get serious about just calling out racism. I want to call the church up to that. The jokes, the I have black friends, I don't see color. Like, let's help educate that and call that out where it needs to be called out.
And even in the spaces where no black people are around.
More, maybe even more so.
Right. Yeah.
Because silence will always send a message.
Yes.
And it's not time to be silent.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what I would call us to, call us up to continue to have the conversations. I think for me and Lauren, it's been a journey. It isn't going to happen overnight. It takes time. And so be willing to embark on the journey. Be willing to get out of the car, to go into the house, because some of the biggest blessings in our life, some of the most fulfillment in our life are on the other side of that, or on the other side of true, deep, real relationships. We don't need to settle for less. The life God called us to is rich, and we don't need to settle for surface. I don't think he's called us to that. And so if you guys would let me, I'd love to pray for us, and then we're going to wrap this thing up, okay? Father, we just thank you. We thank you for an opportunity to come to you just to build unity in your church. God, I believe with everything in me that this makes you happy, that this honors you. And so, God, I thank you for every single person in this circle. Thank you for how they're willing to come and share their story, their testimony. Thank you for how they're willing to just share their love for you, share their love for this church, with hopes that you are going to do a miracle in people's hearts. God, we're not here to change any heart.
That's right.
We're not here to preach anything. We are here to just share what you have done, share the great things about you, share the fact that we trust that you have something great. And then, Father, would you change hearts? So anybody hearing my voice right now, anybody who's listened to this message, God, would you just change something, reveal something, and move the journey forward? God, we thank you that we are a part of a church that is becoming more and more diverse, more and more like heaven, more and more pointing to your creation that was intentional and on purpose, not a mistake. No part of you is colorblind.
Yes.
Father, so thank you for the beauty that is in diversity.
Yes.
And thank you for what you're up to at this place. Father, we submit everything to you. We submit these conversations to you. Have your way. We love you, and it's in your name. Amen. Amen. Thank you, guys. Y'all are amazing. Y'all are amazing. Thank you.
Get out your car.
Get out your car.
Get out your car. Get out your car.